how would you like to heal gallstones? Chen Profesorsky will tell us how. He is a life coach and a therapist for the last 30 years, and he does naturopathy, Chinese and shamanic medicine. And along with Shanni, his wife, he's a naturopath and yoga instructor. So along with Shanni, his wife, also a naturopath and yoga instructor, they've been helping people lose their gallstone without surgery. And with thousands of supervised liver flushing experience, mostly in Israel, they are turning to the world to share their expertise with everyone. So, Chen, tell us more about what are gallstones and which area of the body are they in, and how can someone heal gallstones?
Heal Podcast with Lily Patrascu shares longevity and anti-aging techniques to stay young forever, increase energy, overcome addiction, and live your longest, best life ever. Shared by world's most innovative, alternative, and traditional health thought leaders, healers, and doctors. Discover quantum healing strategies to heal your mind, body, and soul.
Okay, good evening, Lily. And I would love to actually give a very clear and simple picture for this, because people tend to think it's complicated. It's actually not. Gallstones are simply a collection of bile and cholesterol and all kinds of pigments that just put together naturally, always inside the bile. Okay, you always find these ingredients there, but when they turn into mud and then into stones, when they harden, then it becomes a story of pain and discomfort and usually surgery. And what we discovered a long, long time ago, starting with me, is that there is another option. Instead of just cutting out the gallbladder, you can actually flush the stones out. It takes a bit of a preparatory phase. You need to prepare the body, make sure you're strong enough, be sure that everything's in place in the way it should be. And then this area right beneath the ribs on the right side of the body suddenly becomes vacant and comfortable, after it can be very, very uncomfortable when you have stones inside it. And what we decided over the years is to make it better over time. That was our challenge, not just to accept what we tried and worked. We actually work on improving it regularly, and it becomes safer and safer and less uncomfortable, because it is a process that can be a little uncomfortable. And we added supervision to make sure you're never alone during this process. And we even built a community around it to make sure that, you're surrounded by like-minded people who also consider their body a holy thing that you don't need to cut things out of. So that's the short version.
So how does someone get gallstones, and how long does it take for someone to go from having to heal gallstones to actually feeling healed?
Okay, that's a very good question. It starts with bad habits, obviously. If you don't drink enough, then your bile becomes sludgy and it can build more stones. If you eat a lot of fat, or if you lose a lot of weight, people that lose like 20 to 30 kilos at a time can really create a lot of outgoing fat through that area. Pregnancies tend to stimulate the potential stones if it's not prevented correctly, and nursing as well. And so it's a very common thing, apparently. It's like one of the most common surgeries out there. It's not such a rare thing. And the time it takes to go from, okay, I have gallstones, to I don't have gallstones, I have peace of mind, and I have preventative measures in place to know that I have a lot of years of peace of mind. The process is very personal, because it can be like 2 flushes, which would take something like 2 months. And we've also seen at least one patient that took a whole year, because he simply flushed out, and there were more stones coming out. Even we were surprised at a certain point, until it flushed all out. And the whole point here is, once you flush them all out, you're done. You don't have to worry anymore, so long as you learn how to prevent new stones, obviously. And that's part of the process.
Thank you. How does someone know when they have gallstones?
Well, the diagnosis of gallstones is usually through either an ultrasound or through pain and then ultrasound. In other words, some people just find it by mistake, because the doctors are looking somewhere through their stomach for a source of whatever issue they might have, and discover they have gallstones. And many people actually find it the hard way. They simply discover it because they have very distinct pain that is, unmistakable, and then they're sent to an ultrasound.
Thank you. For those people that don't have any pain but do have gallstones, what kind of symptoms could be sort of similar to having gallstones, or what kind of symptoms are kind of like accompanying gallstones?
Well, the telltale signs when there's no pain are usually a very uncomfortable digestive system. It could be very gassy. The digestion is heavy. You have a hard time digesting fats, and sometimes you just feel stuffed inside, like in the upper abdomen area. People can say they try to bend over and feel like they have a rock in there, making it hard for them to bend over.
Thank you. What else would you like people to know about healing gallstones? Like, how safe is it to flush them naturally?
That's a very good question. We've run quite a few thousand flushes over the past 30 years, and we've had 0 incidences of stone getting stuck on the way, despite the fact that some of the stones were 3.5 centimeters in radius, which is enormous by any standards. So that's super safe. And the process itself is something that 86-year-olds have gone through and 10-year-olds have gone through quite successfully. So it's not such an enormous or scary ordeal. It can be a little uncomfortable, but if a 10-year-old kid can do this, then obviously it's something anyone can go through.
Thank you. In advance of, let's say, someone going through the right therapy that would need to go through in order to flush gallstones naturally, are there any particular routines you recommend for people to have that will lead to them either preventing to get gallstones, or if they already have them, to reduce them gradually? Is it like very important to drink a lot of water, or is it important to take certain supplements, or what would you say is important to do to reduce the likelihood of getting gallstones, or to gradually reduce the size of the gallstones?
Well, obviously the first thing is to understand where you were wrong, where you went wrong in your habits. A person that doesn't drink enough obviously will want to learn how to drink more. A person who has a tendency to eat a lot of fat might find it wise to reduce the amount of fat to what your body actually needs and no more. People who don't exercise enough, that would be a wise choice to change. Practically speaking, it's a healthy lifestyle that prevents gallstones, very much in general, because a lot of things can actually impact this. But it doesn't have to be a very difficult change, so long as you have someone actually following you through with this. If you try to do it on your own, then you'd need a lot of guesswork. And if someone actually knows what they're doing and is with you, accompanying you through the process, it's easier for them to be able to see it from the side and say, okay, I can see that this habit is wrong. I can see this might need a change. And it's a much easier process this way. That's why we're working not just on allowing people the option to do it with us, we're also collecting therapists from around the world to teach them our experience, so that there'll be a lot of people available for everyone, anywhere, to be able to actually get their help with this process. Alone is a lot harder. I was actually the one to do it alone first here in Israel, and I know that I would rather have had someone next to me there that knows what he's doing, and that was not the case at the time.
Thank you. How dangerous is it for someone to try to heal gallstones naturally by themselves?
Well, it doesn't necessarily have to be dangerous if they take the right protocol and actually stick to it. But if you're too weak, for instance, and you go through this process, even if you do it exactly the way it's supposed to be, you will still find yourself very much exhausted physically and functionally for doing that. That's one of the things we make sure, is to make sure that the people that go through it get a nice boost of energy before they do that. And that's what makes it much safer. So that's one thing that is very important. And I can't really explain this through a podcast. It would have to be a personal thing. You need more breathing, you need more sleep, you need more, attention with your digestive system and your chewing and your habits of food, etc. But it is possible to turn it into a much easier process when you don't do it alone.
Thank you. Would you say that the process of healing gallstones is relatively simple in terms of the protocol. It's something that you have created over so many years and you have kind of like made it very simple. Or would you say that it's still relatively complicated because it depends on a custom basis? Like every person has their own issues or things that they don't do that they should do, and that's the thing that makes it relatively complex.
Well, it does have two aspects. The flush itself is simple. When done right, it's super simple. It doesn't have that many moving pieces, so to speak. But the process in its wholeness, from preparation to the process of flushing to the prevention during the process and after the process, that does require a lot of perspective. So it's not a matter of complexity so much as it does need personalization and it does need a professional perspective.
Thank you. What else would you like entrepreneurs to know about healing gallstones?
Well, I think the most important thing is to go into it as into a process rather than into a, fix me up quick mindset, because that's very much where we are usually at nowadays. Just give me the pill or give me the knife, fix it for me, let it be. You can't go through this process with that mindset. You'll lose it in your nerves in the middle or something, or you just feel tired of it. If you come from a perspective that says we have an opportunity to learn from these gallstones, so many good things about our lives, improve them so much, and in the process, not just lose the stones, but lose the potential by, preventing them. That attitude can really, really help the process along, and you gain a hell of a lot. I mean, you gain so many wonderful gifts from the gallstones if you do it right. It affects your stress management techniques. It affects your self-realization. Every gallstone is a plant inside your drawers that hasn't come out yet, a source of bitterness. That's a Chinese saying. There are so many good things you can gain by it beyond just not having the gallstones. That would be a pity just to settle for that.
Thank you. Tell us more about the gifts that gallstones can offer. So like once you get rid of gallstones, you said that you get rid of some bitterness and accumulated resentment. And then because you're letting go of that, you're eliminating toxicity from your life. And because of that, you feel overall better. And are there any other gifts that gallstones can offer? Is it like mainly about the perspective of life as well?
Well, perspective of life is a huge subject, but yeah, it does contain it beautifully, because you don't get those tones just by coincidence. There's always a good reason, or mostly reasons. So part of the dealing with the preventative measures is actually learning a lot about yourself. You learn about your needs. You learn about what gives you a hard time and how to deal with it wiser. How to not be frustrated or in pain emotionally from your life status or your marriage or your professional choices so far. And it actually helps drive a whole new kind of thinking, and from the thinking, a whole new kind of living. And entrepreneurs who go into this very often find themselves a lot more focused on accurate self-realization and therefore an accurate business, because it just demanded that kind of inner conversation or outer conversation with us, for instance, because that was their bitterness very often. I mean, if you don't like what you're doing, how on earth are you going to be healthy? It's a daily thing you're doing.
Thank you. Tell us more about healing your gallstones, and what did you learn from that in the process for your personal life?
Well, for me, I was surprised when I found gallstones, despite the fact that I was pretty young. I was 20-something. I know my background. I know the frustrations I went through. I know the nutrition I was used to eating as a child, which was very Polish, and here it means a lot of sugar and a lot of, empty calories and very little value in food, despite the fact that it was very tasty. And it clarified my need to continue the shift. I was already a naturopath when I discovered that I have gallstones, so it was just another push in the right direction. It was just an affirmation that the shifts that I was already doing are going to be very important for me in long term. And the fact that 30 years now I have peace and quiet inside, zero sign of gallstones, I guess it proves I must have learned something, done something right.
Thank you. Is it more dangerous for men than for women to eliminate gallstones without operation?
Well, theoretically, there are more women suffering from gallstones for various reasons. although we see usually about 50-50. So I don't know, maybe it's more proactivity by men that leads them in this case. But no, I don't see any greater danger. The big difference is mostly in mindset. Women have it much more easy when I tell them this is a process. And mostly men are the ones that would look at me and say, what, you're talking about more than one flush? These are the challenges, but it's not more difficult for men or more difficult for women. It's the same process.
The thing I don't understand is how can you eliminate as a man like a 3-centimeter gallstone?
Well, the question is for women as well. I mean, if you have a huge stone inside beyond the 3.5 centimeters, then I wouldn't rush to flush. I would do my best to reduce their size to 3.5 or less, because I've known those to come out safely, comfortably, and no pain involved. But the reality is that we've seen those stones come out. So no matter how implausible it sounds, because the piping, the ducts are only like 5-6 millimeters in diameter, but they're flexible apparently, because otherwise how can you explain those stones coming out? And they come out. And when you have someone seriously in pain, every bite they take of anything that has a little fat, going through the process, and then no more suffering, even when they test the limits. And I've had one of those patients that took a few years of testing and still didn't suffer. Well, when you have results that speak for themselves, you don't really argue with them. I would love for one doctor at least to be serious enough to actually, challenge the system and research it together and find out how it works. I would love the answers to that myself. But for now, I'm satisfied with the fact that I know it works. It just comes out, the person feels better, no pain, no jaundice, which is a classical sign of, blocked ducts or something. Can't argue with results.
Thank you. Tell us some case studies of entrepreneurs you've worked with or people you've worked with that you've helped to heal gallstones, and tell us what kind of symptoms they were suffering from and how did they kind of heal from gallstones.
Well, there are quite a few cases I can think of, but I'll take a few very radically different cases so that, it gives perspective. One of the classical cases is a woman coming in, suffering a lot of pain, but in the wrong place. And that happens quite a lot. It's just not in the place you would expect pain to come from gallstones. So that, for instance, opens a whole, I guess, can of worms, because it means that the diagnosis of the source of the pain was wrong, apparently. So we actually have to deal with the pain source and with the stones. Otherwise, we'd be flushing the stones out and the woman would be left feeling pain because the original reason, like an ulcer, wasn't treated. So that's one classical situation we run across quite a lot. It's pretty difficult, apparently, to diagnose it accurately. Another classical situation would be a man that came to us and was very uncomfortable. His body felt uncomfortable. There was this big bulge in his upper right stomach, and he was feeling it. It was really in the way of his life and comfort. He went through one flush, took a lot of stones out, came back for 4 more flushes, and still took a lot of stones out, but he felt very clearly lighter and lighter in his upper abdomen until eventually nothing came out. It just very clearly showed, and the stones were, he had stones, this size, it was 3.5 centimeters, I think, too, like our greatest stone so far. But then the next flush, it was only 3 centimeters, the largest stones that came out, and then 2.5 centimeters, and it was obviously clearing out smaller and smaller stones from within the system. He had a lot. And it's not a world record. I know that some people have actually had surgery and, they recovered 5,000 stones from their gallbladder. It sounds crazy, but it happened already. It's recorded. But in his case, he just took them out, and, it became smaller and smaller eventually. No more. Nice and quiet. No more pain. No more suffering. Now, some of our clients actually come with zero pain. It's not uncommon. I think about 70% of people with gallstones actually don't suffer pain for them. They can have inflammations and they can have the stones and maybe jaundice, but no pain at all, which is actually good for them. You don't have to learn the hard way if you don't have to. But it's still a very important idea to clear out all this. And so, we take people like that, and it's just an easier path because since they don't suffer, the nutritional, instructions are a little easier for them. They just don't have that corner where everybody in pain sits in and says, okay, I have to be very, very accurate. I don't want more of that pain. And I think the most important important of examples are actually children that came. There was one child who quite surprised me. I mean, 10 years old, where did she have an opportunity to build stones? But apparently her nutrition was challenging because she had celiacs, which meant she had all kinds of very processed foods, extra processed to not have the gluten inside, and that actually built that base for the stones. So we actually had to teach the mother how to create food that was a lot more healthy and celiac fitting so that she could prevent the stones from recurring in her case, and not just the regular diet. So there's all kinds of personalized cases I can pull out like this, because the whole point of a professional doing this, our challenge is to actually understand why that person's coming to us. And then the whole process is built around that understanding. Now, one last thing that's important to know is one of the questions that keep coming up, and that is, why don't you just melt the stones away? I mean, you actually suggested the idea before, making them smaller, but the challenge in smaller stones is that they tend to flush spontaneously into the ducts, and when a stone flushes spontaneously, she usually gets stuck. So one of the worst things we could do is actually make the stones grow smaller and smaller and smaller, and eventually, instead of just disappearing, they're going to start flying into the ducts, creating repeating painful attacks. We do use the necessary formulation to flush out excessive mud after the matter, after we finish the flushing, as a preventative measures. Give people herbs, they drink it, and it just keeps flushing the little bit of mud that's accumulated over the year, and that way it prevents new stones from building. But I would never actually make them smaller on purpose beyond from 430 to 4.5 centimeters to 3.5 centimeters. I wouldn't actually go for just flushing them out in this way, because that is actually dangerous.
Thank you. Does someone need to do some sort of scan to figure out the size of the gallstones so that you can decide, for example, what is the most appropriate course of action for that specific person?
Yeah, well, most people come to me with a diagnosis, which means they come with an ultrasound already. And the ultrasound is the common tool for this diagnosis. It's not always accurate. That is important to know. I've seen people that went through surgery and were given an empty gallbladder in return. In other words, they never had stones, apparently, or that was a misdiagnosis. And I have seen people that were told they have only 2 or 3 small stones, but very dynamic, so maybe it's a good idea. They took out their gallbladder and found it full to the rim. So it's the best we have nowadays, but I wouldn't count on that, for instance, to know when we're done. The way to know when you're done flushing is when nothing comes out. So yeah, that's an important point.
Thank you. Tell us where entrepreneurs can connect with you.
Well, obviously, the best place to look us up is in our community. It's a brand new community, which we built in order to present this process to the world. And it's a wonderful place to talk with us and learn from us. There's a digital course waiting for those coming to Flush, because it actually teaches you step by step so that you can have that information while we supervise the process for you. So that's the best place to start. But if you just look for Chen and Shanni and Gallstones, you'll find us in all kinds of websites that we have, and I'm sure we'll have the link somewhere below.
Follow me for more interviews with world's most innovative health changemakers to live your healthiest life ever.